Even though Ohio State is favored to beat Oregon in the regular season, that doesn't mean they're a lock to win the Big Ten championship.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes. Here on Tuesday, June 11th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And during today's show, it's my guy, Mo Murphy, is back with us once again. And a network that he is affiliated with, the Off the Ball Network, recently put out a ranking that had Oregon ranked higher than Ohio State. Then I went to FanDuel to see what FanDuel has to say, not only about the odds for Ohio State and Oregon in that game week 7, but also which team is favored to win the Big Ten Conference. And it put this thought in my mind, and Mo, I wonder if you agree. Even though Ohio State's favored to beat Oregon in week 7, that doesn't mean the Buckeyes are a lock to win the Big Ten Championship in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when you think about it, like right now, it seems like the overwhelming thing is Ohio State and Oregon to play each other week 7. They expect the loser of that game, that be their only loss for the season, and they'll see each other in the Big Ten Championship. So if you're favoring Ohio State to win that game, then it'd be tough to turn around and favor them in the Big Ten Championship. We know how hard it is to beat a team twice.
Yes.
Depending on the sports book you look at, some have Oregon slight favorite over Ohio State as far as winning the Big Ten. So there's some of those factors. But like you said, they have on FanDuel, they got Ohio State favorite slightly over Oregon in the game and to win the Big Ten. So it does depend on what sports book you look at as far, but I could see like, yeah, Ohio State beats Oregon, but then if they have to play each other again in the Big Ten Championship, it's a tough ask to beat a team twice, especially depending on how the result is of week 7. We go out there and pound Oregon and we're just the better team, then I think you can pencil us in to beat them again if we play them in the Big Ten Championship. But I think that's going to be one of those high-stake games. I think that's one of the most important games of the season in college football this year.
And currently right now, our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, they have Ohio State favored to beat Oregon at -1.5, which really you could say maybe it's a toss-up in the college football. Maybe you could say, well, that's where the spread is right now, but once you get closer to the game, it will be a coin flip or Oregon will be favored because they are the home team. And Mo, this is one of those times, especially early in the season, home field advantage, especially in the middle of the season, home field advantage really, really, really matters. Because we all know how tough it is for teams to come into Ohio State, into the shoe to play football. I can't remember the last time I have seen Ohio State play inside Oregon Stadium to play a football game. And so it really makes it one thing where Ohio State really doesn't go out west to the West Coast, far West Coast to play football games. So that's a time zone jump and adjustment that you have to deal with. But also, you're a long way from home. A lot of these kids are Midwestern kids. You may want to say, Jay, they're at Ohio State. That doesn't matter. And I'll come back with you and say, yes, that stuff definitely matters. If you've ever traveled from one time zone to another, say Eastern to Central, that's one thing. But to go from Eastern to Pacific and then play a football game, that's really difficult. So, Mo, that trip out to Eugene, Oregon and Autzen Stadium, the Duck fans are already going to be loud. They're going to be crazy all day. And then for Ohio State, for this to be a potential game where both teams are undefeated, this isn't just a bragging rights thing for in season. This has Big Ten Conference Championship aspirations on the line. Also, playoff aspirations on the line. Maybe the team that wins gets a bye. Maybe the team that loses does not. That stuff matters.
Yeah, I mean, now my theory on traveling from West Coast to East Coast, because I've done it both ways. I think you adapt better when you travel to the West Coast than you do traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, because you jump back in time. So if we hypothetically play Oregon at 3:30 in the afternoon, East Coast Standard Time, that's technically your body feels like it's a 12 o'clock game. Ohio State kicks off at 12 o'clock all the time. If you play them later because you're back, if you play them at 7:30, so that's a 4:30 game. I think anytime outside of having to play a Pac-12 after dark game, your body will be fine. So I'm not that concerned. And no disrespect to Oregon, but they were able to dodge us play. I don't want to say dodge because it had nothing to do. It wasn't like the Michigan situation, but we didn't play Oregon during the COVID year. We were supposed to travel to Oregon that year. We were supposed to play in Oregon. How do I remember that? I had tickets to that game. I was supposed to go to the game.
I know you was mad.
Oh, yeah. I was extremely upset, but I was supposed to go to that game. But no disrespect. Is Oregon even like, when we go to Oregon, is that going to be one of the 5 toughest places that we've played in the past 5 years? I don't think so. And I think playing on the West Coast benefits Ohio State I think Ohio State is one of those teams, they could go to the West Coast and run the West Coast. They play the same style of play, and Ohio State's pretty much better than every West Coast team every year. So it tends to their style of game. And Ohio State, I think, is typically a better version of Oregon year in and year out. So going to Eugene, no disrespect, I'm sure it's going to be loud, and everybody's buying into Oregon and Dan Lanning, and he's going to be the face. He's going to be that coach. Him and Lane Kiffin are going to be the 2 coaches that are going to be all over your screen all year, especially the more they win. But can you beat Ohio State? Could all the hype die down after, we're not playing for clicks, we play to win games? Like, that was cool and all last year, but you're not in the Pac-12 no more, and you have to play Ohio State in order to win a Big Ten championship. So with all the factors that will probably lean against Ohio State, I feel more comfortable Ohio State going to Oregon than saying, like, we got to go play in Tuscaloosa in week 7, or we got to go play in Oxford in week 7 at 3:30 in the afternoon, like playing in the South where it's hot, or having to go to Austin and play in the middle of the dead heat in week 7. So I like our chances. I think everything, the weather, the field conditions, but probably the conditions outside match up to Ohio State's advantage anyway. And I don't think Oregon's a hostile enough crowd for me to worry too much about the fact if Ohio State loses, it won't be because they played on the road.
Hey, you make a good point about the crowd, because Ohio State's used to playing in Happy Valley, playing Penn State, used to playing Michigan. Michigan State's one of those places where it can be crazy and loud occasionally when they're hitting, when the team is very, very good. But even then, like, a lot of schools that Ohio and Nebraska's one of those, like, well, Nebraska ain't been good in a long time, but if Nebraska were good, they still sell out. Their stadium's bigger than what they have at Oregon. That atmosphere is one thing that, well, it really won't phase Ohio State. They have played in big-time playoff games where it's 50-50 or 60-40 or 70-30, where they're not only going up against the other team, a lot of the other fans are wild and crazy, and winning and losing a regular season game does not hit the same as losing to Clemson in the playoff. So the atmosphere is one of those elements of this game that, even though Oregon is home, I do think even though the time zone thing is there, Ohio State will be ready for that game, because, man, they've been waiting for, Ryan Day specifically has been waiting for this moment for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, and then on top of the fact, like I said, Ohio State's usually they're very similar to Oregon. Typically, year in and year out, they're built the same. They depend on their athletes. They got the best corners, the best receivers, all the finesse positions, but Ohio State does it to a higher level. And I'm going to be honest. Listen, I ain't worried about going to Eugene, Oregon, for the simple fact I watch Ohio State have to play a playoff game in Atlanta, Georgia against the University of Georgia. Like, you talk about, these are supposed to be neutral site games. I get it. Like, you can't make it dead neutral site. But all I'm saying is they had to play a game on the road, essentially, against a hostile crowd, against a team that's been there the past few years, and you had to play a playoff game, and you went toe-to-toe with what's been essentially the best team for the past 3 years. Like, have they won all 3 national championships? No, but this has been the best team top to bottom for the past 3 years. You went into a playoff environment on their turf, essentially, in their city, and you went toe-to-toe with them. So I don't think Oregon's the tallest of task. I think Oregon's going to be a really good team. Yes. I think they're the team that we probably will have to play twice, play in week 7, beat them, and then have to beat them again to win the Big Ten championship. But just from the Ohio State standpoint, like, and it's, I don't want to, I mean, we could be cocky about it or whatever, but Ohio State beats themselves. So, like, when you're looking at Oregon, I don't think the ways that we think Ohio State could lose that game have anything to do with what Oregon does. I think the more questions are, what's Ohio State going to look like by week 7? So when it comes to solely focused on that game, like, by week 7, we'll know if Ohio State can really win a national championship or not. And I think that game will put a stamp on it. If they are the best team in the country at that point, then when they beat Oregon, you feel like they can win the national championship. If they have a loss by then, or there's enough chinks in their armor, then you don't consider them a true national champion contender, which will probably mean if they lose to Oregon, it won't hurt the fan base as bad. If we're not looking at them as they could contend for a championship, then that Oregon loss will just wake us up and smell the coffee a little bit earlier than week 12.
Over the next few weeks, there'll be a lot of preseason polls and preseason football preview magazines coming out. I actually got to pick up one. Hopefully one's going to come in soon. My wife might actually be able to pick it up for me. But there's a network out there that has Oregon ranked over Ohio State in their preseason poll. We'll dive into that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. And guys, check this out. Billiards Plus carries grills. They have up to 30-year warranties. That's right, a grill with a 30-year warranty. Everything you need for in-home and backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Ahausen, Canada, billiards, and more. And the grills, whether you like charcoal or gas or wood-fired, Billiards Plus has a perfect setup for all grillers. They're family-owned and operated. And when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong no matter the season. Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on the YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Mo was trying to figure out a way to dive into this, and I didn't say you're part of the Off the Ball Network earlier in the show, but you are part of the Off the Ball Network that's coming out now. Also, you're doing a phenomenal job covering the Mavericks right now, as in the NBA Finals. So Mo is a part of the Off the Ball Network, been a part of that network 3 years?
Yeah, like 4 years, 3 or 4, something like that now. Yeah.
And so when I saw this, first off, I know the guys that are part of this network. I know the guy that started it. So I was very focused on where Ohio State was and if I needed to come at somebody's head for Ohio State's ranked. The Off the Ball Network has Ohio State ranked behind Oregon. I'm going to go 10 through 1 so you can see where everybody falls, and I'll let Mo chime in to give his 2 cents for these rankings. Number 10 is Missouri. Number 9, Notre Dame. 8, Michigan. 7, Ole Miss. 6, Penn State. 5, Alabama. 4, Texas. 3, Ohio State. 2, Oregon. 1, Georgia. Mo, the floor is yours.
Well, okay. So obviously being Locked On Buckeyes, and I'm the Ohio State fan, and I let this slip through the cracks. So I personally had Ohio State number 2. I had Georgia number 1. I think Ohio State is going to be the best team in the country. I personally, for a biased opinion, will never rank Ohio State number 1 coming into the season. I will never do it. 2, 3, 4, 5. I will rank them 25, even if I think they're the best team in the country before I rank them 1, because it seems like when we have that number 1 next to our name, it's a jinx. It ruins the expectations. So our thought process, because really it's the network, but me and Walker are the college football guys, so we pretty much put this rankings. We did 1 through 25. I did 1. He did 1. We kind of fared who meets in the middle. Some were pretty off for both of us, and some were really close, so we tried to do averages. We felt like 1 through 4 was Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas. Well, Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas. You could put any of those 4, 1 through 4, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. I had Ohio State 2. He had Ohio State 3. So I had Ohio State 2, Oregon 3. He had an Oregon 2, Ohio State 3. For argument's sake of finishing out the rest of the list, I was like, I won't even let my bias kick in. I'm not going to argue with you about whether you think Oregon or Ohio State is better. They'll play each other week 7. This is a preseason ranking. And we think 1 through 4 could be interchangeable, and neither one of us were bad an eye. So Ohio State fell at 3. I think they're 2. I put them at 2, but they fell at 3 because we pretty much think the top 4 teams could be interchangeable. You could rank Texas 1 if you want to. You can rank Ohio State number 1. You can rank Oregon number 1 or Georgia. And I wouldn't bat an eye and have a problem. I think just those are the top 4 teams entering the season. So when it came to Ohio State being number 3, no, this was not my doing. If it was me and me only, I would have had them number 2. So people don't kill me. But that was our consensus, especially with the top 4.
So why do you think Ohio State's better than Oregon?
Because they just are. Like, they're just more talented. Like Ohio State, they only have one question, and their question is the quarterback. And I don't know how much of a question that'll be entering week 7 when we play Oregon. I think we got the better receivers. I think we got the better secondary. I think we got we're better in the trenches, which that's one of our questions as well. But I think that's one of Oregon's questions. The only question that Oregon has is Dan Lanning might be a better coach than Ryan Day. Maybe. I think Ryan Day's better, but I'm just talking about the overall what people may say. Dan Lanning and Dylan Gabriel might be better than whoever Ohio State's starting quarterback is entering the season. I think and when you have the head coach argument for you, if you are Oregon's better than Ohio State and you have the quarterback argument for you, it's easier for somebody to put Oregon over Ohio State. But we are so much more talented than Oregon everywhere else. I would have Ohio State better than Oregon. I think a lot of people think they'll be better. But like you said, they get to prove it in week 7 as well. So if you have Oregon better and Ohio State right behind them, I'm like, well, they'll play week 7. So your thought and my thought get to go at it in week 7 anyway. So I didn't think it was, whether Ohio State 2 or 3, but that one spot can make all the difference and everybody really loving your rankings or hating your rankings as well. Like Ohio State at 3, to some people that are listening to this show might be the most disrespectful thing in the world. But all I'm saying is when you in the comments, I had them number 2. I put them number 2. I just want to throw that out there.
So when I look at these 2 teams, I think they're 2 of the better teams in the country. Like I haven't put a top 25 together. Mm-hmm. They'll both be in my top 10. And honestly, both would be in my top 5, probably my top 4. This is just off the top of my head, just thinking about the teams they have, the coaches that are leading them, the quarterbacks, the defenses, the physicality, all that stuff. I believe they're 2 of the better teams in the country. And even though Ohio State does have a question mark at quarterback because you don't know who it's going to be, and even questions on the O-line and tight end, and really got a lot of inexperienced wide receivers, the defense to me right now puts them over the top. Because outside of linebacker, you don't have any issues on the defensive line. You don't have any issues with the secondary. And any issues you might have at linebacker, your front 4 can cover those up for a few games. They can let those guys get some run in, get some reps, figure things out on the fly. So by the time they play the Oregon and Ohio State game, the linebackers are literally in midseason form and not figuring things out week 1, week 2, or week 3. So I do think the defense definitely helps him. And also, Mo, I kind of realized something, not recently, but it kind of went back to my mind. We have been so focused on and really kind of fortunate for Ohio State to have really good quarterback play, elite quarterback play. You don't need every part of your team to be elite. Now, it's a benefit if it is, but if your O-line is not as great as you want it to be, and if the tight end room is not playing to the way you want it to be, but if that's a well-oiled machine and they're moving the ball consistently, not making mistakes, doing the things that they need to do, and letting the defense consistently give them great field position, that's really all you need. So Will Howard is not Stroud or Fields or Haskins or Barrett or any of those Ohio State great quarterbacks, but I don't think he needs to be. I think he just needs to do his job and let the defense control what the opposing offense can do. That's why I currently right now think Ohio State is a better football team in the preseason than Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying is like Stetson Bennett got 2 national championships.
You're right.
So everything that you said is correct. Like, just to your point, like you don't have to have one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the country to win a national championship. You don't have to have one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the country to compete for a national championship. but we've been so spoiled with elite
Yes.
quarterback play that all falls down. I mean, just think about it. We were 11-0 walking into the Michigan game like any other year, but we were panicking because Kyle McCord was the quarterback. But we were 11-0 just like every other year. The same stakes were in the Michigan game like every other year. Both teams undefeated. Y'all got to play each other. Winner goes to the Big Ten championship. And this was the least confident we felt because Kyle McCord was the quarterback. But we've been, like I said, we've been spoiled with elite college quarterback play. I don't care what you tell me, what the people in the comments tell me what these guys did in the NFL. I don't care. They were elite. JT Barrett was an elite college quarterback. Go down the line. So it was so many years since Todd Beckman that we forgot what it's like to be an elite national contending team with a Todd Beckman at quarterback. No disrespect to Todd Beckman, but that is not the vision of what your national championship quarterback looks like. And from then on, we had elite college quarterback play. So now we focus on that so much because that seems like that was the success. But all I'm saying is the last time we won a national championship, we won with a third string quarterback. Now, I know Cardale Jones was better than any other third string quarterback in the country. I get that. Probably starts for 98%. But we didn't know that heading into the Big Ten championship. All we knew is he was our backup quarterback. And if Braxton Miller was the quarterback, he would have been the third string. That's all we knew until we saw him play. Cardale Jones steps in. All he had to do was not mess it up. And we won a national championship. But we have elite offenses. Never won a national championship with him. When we get a guy who steps in and all he got to do is not mess it up because you got elite play from everywhere else on the field and you have a legendary running back who goes on a 3-game legendary stretch, you can win a national championship and play with the best of them. But I think that's part of Ohio State's recruiting as well. They're so focused on the finesse and it looks good and the 5 stars next to the name. And instead of it just need to be a well-oiled machine and you just need to have really good players that can create an elite system. And that'll win you a national championship because these really good players that create an elite system, and I hate to say it, but that team up north did not have any super elite. They didn't even, did they have a guy go in the first round this year? Like they didn't have a super elite player, but they had a well-oiled machine that won a national championship.
McCarthy was a first-round pick.
Oh, McCarthy, I forgot.
But
yeah,
he's not a first-round talent. Yeah. I'll say it now.
Outside of that, their best players didn't get drafted in the first round, and McCarthy only went because he was a quarterback. So, and Jim Harbaugh. But all I'm saying is that was a well-oiled machine in a great system. They won. The team that won 2 times before that was Georgia with Stetson Bennett. Well-oiled machine, played great everywhere, and all their quarterback had to do was just not mess it up. And it didn't look great throughout the year all the time. They didn't score 60 points every year, but that's the confusion, I think, with us at Ohio State and everywhere else. If we're not scoring 60 a night, we can't. 60 every Saturday, we can't win a national championship. And that's just not the case. And I think that'll be the case this year. If we win a national championship, I don't think we'll have the number 1 offense in the country. I think we'll have one of the top, but we're not going to score 40 plus every game. But I think this year we have a team that's built to win every game.
You know, Mo, you touch on a lot of great things here with the quarterbacks, and it reminds me about something that Ohio State has that Oregon doesn't. I'll tell you about it next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Once again, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. One thing Ohio State currently has that Oregon does not is 2 guys at running back, one last name Henderson, the other last name Judkins. Those 2 guys individually, Mo, are going to be a big asset and a big reason Ohio State's quarterbacks aren't asked to do all other worldly things. They're not needing to go into a game and throw for 500 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, and hopefully they can get 40 to 50 yards on the ground and another touchdown using their legs. They're not going to be asked to do that. What are they going to be asked to do? Run a more balanced offense, more even with the pass and run combination, but also you may find games where they're running the ball more than they pass the ball. And if you think about Cardale Jones winning that conference championship game, beating Bama, and then beating Oregon, honestly, the national championship, I don't believe he would have played as well as he did in those games if it was not for Ezekiel Elliott and the offensive line opening up massive holes and let that man run to the end zone consistent multiple times every single game. So we can look at the quarterback position and say quarterback this, quarterback that. It's the guys behind him or whoever the quarterbacks are that will make their job, the quarterback's job, a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about it. We got a quarterback that played a lot of games. Like,
yes,
how often does your starting quarterback get to be the epitome of experience in college? You don't really play more than 5 years, period. And we have a guy who's basically played 5 years of college football. And so you have the experience. And like you said, if Judkins and Henderson can be elite running backs, and I think they are elite running backs.
Yeah.
If they stay healthy, Chip Kelly's entire offense is based off of the success of the run. And his quarterback, he could start running early and it looks like, oh, Howard might only have to throw 198 yards and 2 touchdowns to win this game. But the offense is so respected running the ball that they just explode for 400 yards of offense completely, 250 of that being passing in the second half. So everything is going to go off the run game. But you saw it like Zeke, when we won the national championship, Zeke ran for 200-something yards. Cardale Jones also threw for almost 300, but you didn't even bat an eye because his 300 or almost 300 were efficient. It was making plays when you need them, but none of them were just standout throws, 70-yard bombs, beating the defense down the field. But like because of the run game, I just pick you apart up and down the field. And that's how you end up scoring 42 on Alabama. That's how you end up blowing out Oregon because you control the game. Oregon tries to run this high-powered, fast offense. And we stop them defensively. We milk time off the clock, but we're scoring every time we get the ball because everything's off the run. So I think that's going to be the success. I think how we run the ball and play defense is exactly how we're going to win the national championship. And people might not love it, but I think this team is going to we got a lot of 5-star wide receivers on the team. But I think this team is going to look more like a Georgia national champion than a high-powered, who even with a high-powered offense wins a bunch of national championships outside of like Alabama? Like you want this to be Alabama with Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy and all Henry Ruggs and all them on the roster because we have that type of talent. But I think this is going to look like when they had all that talent, but also had Derrick Henry back there and had to play against Ohio State and he tried and run them to a national championship. You're going to have to play defense. Some games are going to be ugly, but when you're 12-0, 13-0, 14-0, 15-0, playing in that national championship game, those 15 games prior to how you won are not going to matter. And so I think Ohio State fans everything's not going to look great every week. We might win some ugly games, but we as long as it's 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4, we have to stop focusing how it looks early on and just let it become into midseason form and then let it happen into the Big Ten championship. Just got to be a little patient this year because I think there's going to be some things early on that you're not going to love, but we'll learn from and fix the very next week, and it won't even matter.
You know, this team right now, we're thinking about that game specifically against Oregon and why Ohio State, we both believe, at least right now, believe Ohio State will win that game. Ryan Day, it was a graphic going around Twitter recently, and I don't know exactly who put it out there, who put it together. It was basically Ohio State in top 10 matchups in the playoff era since 2014 until last year. And I forget the exact total record Ohio State had, but I know Urban Meyer was 12-3 in top 10 matchups. That includes regular season and playoff games, I believe conference championship too, while he was at Ohio State. Ryan Day's 8-7. So my expectation right now is that both of these teams will be ranked as top 10 teams, probably top 5 teams, when they play week 7 of the upcoming season. That's one of those things as big of an issue as it is for Ryan Day against Michigan or against certain coaches in Saban or Kirby Smart, or he eventually got over that Dabo hump. Dude, that top 10 matchup thing, he might not be a big game coach. And I don't want to sit up here and say he is or he isn't. The record says 8-7 against top 10 opponents. But also, he's done a lot of things differently this offseason that make me want to believe he will be victorious in this game. But sometimes big game Ryan Day is not the big game Ryan Day you want. And so that matchup, that can kind of begin to turn the narrative about how Ryan Day coaches and Ryan Day's teams perform in big-time matchups.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I agree with everything you said, actually. Just if you look at it from a different lens, first off, Ryan Day had to precede one of the greatest coaches of the past 40 years.
Yes.
Like outside of Nick Saban, Urban Meyer's been arguably, or he has been the best college football head coach outside of Nick Saban throughout this era. So you have to supersede that. And when this guy is 12-3 in big top 10 matchups, oh man, sometimes it never gets as good as that. Like
yes,
Alabama might go through that right now where we have a really good head coach, but he's no Nick Saban. Of course not. He's one of the greatest. You don't always get to have one of the greatest walk in and remain and keep grooming the greatest. But with Ryan Day, I say the biggest thing, and I can't say it's recruiting because we have one of the top 3 recruiting classes. I think some of the teams in the Big Ten have caught up to Ohio State. And I say that when I say Alabama's been caught in the SEC a little bit. Like Georgia passed them and won 2 in a row. And really outside of losing, Alabama should have played for 3 national championships in a row. Nobody valued Nick Saban any differently. I think they caught up to Ohio State. The gap between the best team in the conference now and your next best is not huge. It usually was. We usually knew we'd get scared by Penn State, scared by Michigan, but we win those games. Now we get scared by Penn State and don't beat Michigan. So now that we're not, I guarantee you, if we had the same record, but he wasn't losing to Michigan at the end of the year, we would still love Ryan Day. And I think it'd be accepted that, hey, when he goes to play the SEC, he doesn't have the greatest record. Neither did Jim Tressel. But he had that 2002 national championship. Urban Meyer had that 2014 national championship that could carry on. If Ryan Day was to do it this year, we will not bat an eye about Ryan Day for the next 10 years. If he can win a national championship and tie that to his name, we will not talk about the lack of winning against the SEC or these top 10 matchups for the next 10 years. The only thing is Ryan Day hasn't brought a trophy home. Urban Meyer did it early. Like he was the coach for what? It was his 3rd year. And the only reason we couldn't win before that was because of the whole bowl thing with Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel won back in 2002. Nobody cared that we lost to LSU, lost to Florida. Like it didn't damage him that much because he already had that national championship next to his name. So I think if Ryan Day gets one this year, the narrative changes, obviously. He signs a 10 or probably 20-year deal with Ohio State. We never let him get up out of Columbus for the rest of his life. And you don't worry about that 8-7 record. It's got that hardware, and it matters. And Ohio State's due. It's been what? But when Tressel won, it was 12 years before we won again. Urban Meyer won in 2014. We going on year 11 without winning a national championship. So I think it's also about that time. Ryan Day been the coach for 6, going on 7 years. So I think just people are so frustrated with Ryan Day because he don't have that hardware under his name during his tenure as the head coach. But if he brings that, the conversation changes. And there's going to be some people who still like, dang, we won the national championship, but now we're going to have to keep with the mediocrity of Ryan Day if that's how they feel, if he's mediocre. But buys you time when you win the championship. That's the difference. They won early. He didn't. And so now the clock is ticking without a national championship. And not only is it ticking for we won in 2014 with Urban Meyer, but now it's just ticking, period. Ohio State's ready for a national championship. They don't care who the head coach is at this point. The clock is ticking. It's time to bring one home. It's 2020 something. We haven't left these decades without one. So now we can't leave the 2020s, and we're about to be in the middle of 2020. And the 2020s enter in 2025 when the national championships played. So I think also Ohio State is just eager to bring one to the program, period. It doesn't even matter who the head coach is.
That's my guy, Mo Murphy. Follow him on X at Mo_Cheese15. Hosting the Open Flames podcast, part of the Off the Wall Network, also part of the Believe Network, hosting Believe in Mavs, doing a phenomenal job of covering the Dallas Mavericks during the NBA Finals. It's unfortunate that they're probably going to lose the series, but he's doing a great job with that. Go out.
It was a nice run. It was nice.
Go check out that show if you want to get some Mavericks thoughts and opinions from Mo on the Dallas Mavericks. You can follow me on X at JSteven07. We're out of here, Buckeye fans, on a Tuesday. We'll see you next time.